comparison, you said that the other university, which shall remain nameless,
Which I love.
your writing in Arabic kind of suffered because of maybe the way they were teaching. Is that the intimation?
So, I just never had to write a kitaba. At all.
At the other university?
No. It just didn't happen.
Okay.
Maybe in class, we'd have, for our tests, we'd have to write a paragraph. But for us to go home and type, I remember the first time I was assigned that here, I was like, I can't type on it's not happening. And then they're like, no, it actually is. And so I had to do it. But I had never had to type on a computer. I had never had to write a paragraph for homework. It was just writing by hand in class. So, I don't know. That was my lack of experience.
Additional, what do you think of the one-on-one writing conferences that you have had or that you have regularly?
I've already had one last semester with Ustaza Hope, but I thought it was helpful in that it helped me really pin down what I was saying in my writing and the best way to put that in Arabic, because I have all my ideas in English, but like we were talking about before, transferring them into a coherent structure in Arabic is difficult, and it helped me see another perspective on what I had actually written, how that sounded to someone who's more experienced in Arabic versus what I thought I was saying. So that's what was helpful for me.
Got it. Thoughts on writing conferences?
I had the one with RTA last semester, and for me it helped reinforce how to use certain vocabulary correctly. And for me that's how my writing in general goes. It helps me solidify how I'm supposed to properly use certain words in Fusha, and so it helps with my verbal skills as well. And then I've met with Ustaza Leila this semester, and we just talked briefly on writing, and she was helping me understand more stylistic things, such as when to use Jumla Ismiya. Our starter sentence was Jumla Fa'aliya, and so that I thought that was very interesting, because this semester we're finally getting into more stylistic aspects of writing, when before it was just try to use everything we've learned in a matter pretty grammatically correct way.
Good.
And like Claire and Ethan, I've only had one writing conference before. That was also last semester, but I did feel like I got a lot out of it, because my TA made me read what I wrote out loud, and then as soon as I started reading it out loud, I kind of thought, maybe this doesn't quite make sense, and she sat there and asked me, what was it that you're trying to say, and I kind of reread it and said, I don't really know what I was trying to say. I can't think what it was, but it definitely helped me to sit down and reevaluate what kind of message I was trying to get across and how to change those ideas in English into something that was appropriate in Arabic.
Good. Just a quick yes or no from everyone. Do you wish you could have more time for writing conferences?
Sometimes. I think that it's definitely helpful. It's kind of just, it adds on to the homework. But, I mean, if it wasn't a necessary, once a week thing, I definitely would want to. If I got a kitaba back and had questions over it, would definitely be helpful. Maybe not on a regular basis, but if I ever had any concerns with my essay, I would love to sit down with my teacher or TA and have a writing conference.
Meeting one-on-one, because you just can't put those questions, there's no time for it in class.
Right, yeah.
Do you feel the same way?
I think they'd be beneficial every couple of kitabas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think ultimately it would be helpful. The idea of having even more stuff to do that's mandatory is frightening, but if it were a thing that you could just do casually and had the opportunity to go do that, I feel like I would take advantage of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Because Arabic at UT is very casual, isn't it? Vida?
Yeah, I would. I feel like you guys who want it to be casual, you should just take your kitabas into office hours.
Yeah.
So, because that's what it sounds like, right? But I would benefit from being told, oh, this is your writing conference, so
otherwise. Okay, great. Next question, and now this is no holds barred. So, what do you like and dislike about the way you are taught and have been taught to write at UT Austin and any other universities if they are applicable? And out of everything that you do, what do you think is the most beneficial when it comes to writing and how you are given corrective feedback and instructed to write? Do you want to start, Eden?
I can start. So this semester they made the second semester of third year Arabic an intensive writing course to prepare us for content courses later. And I wish they did that earlier. So we have a kitaba due, we have a 300 word kitaba due every Friday, and then we have 3 drafts, 3 500 word drafts due intermittently through the semester for a larger project. And just the practice of writing that much in 1 week is really helpful. The first night that so last semester we only had to write at most maybe 250 words. Just the practice of having to write 500 words, which is 2.5 pages double spaced, was the most daunting and like feel good experience I've ever had, because after I wrote it I was like, oh my god, I can write an essay. And that was really nice. But then I wish that practice started earlier. Like I feel like, you know, it's kind of like 3 years into the game, like I should be stronger with my writing. And of course that has something to do with like my early education of Arabic, but I don't know, I like the weekly kitabas really helped me like be able to express myself more quickly in Arabic, because we're supposed to supposedly only take an hour and a half to write that much. So it's fluency writing and it helps.
Okay, so summary-wise, you said things that are most beneficial are the kind of intensive writing structure of third year.
Yeah.
And did we cover anything that you dislike?
In terms, I dislike that I didn't have to do it earlier.
Got it.
Yeah.
So you really want to work hard, did you?
Well, I mean, if it's like included in our homework, it's not added homework, right? Like I'm not asking for 4 hours more homework each week. I'm just asking for it to play a bigger part instead of just drills all the time.
I suppose the daunting thing that you felt, though, this semester would have been exacerbated had you been a second-year student expected to write like you are now as a third year.
Right, but as a second-year student, we only had to write 250 words maybe once every 2 weeks.
Uh-huh. So you think proportionately it was considerably less? It was much less?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I don't know, once a week.
Got it. Okay, good. Thoughts? Do you want me to repeat the questions?
Yeah.
So, what do you like and dislike about the way you're taught or have been taught to write Arabic at UT? And what do you feel is most beneficial out of everything you do in terms of writing?
I like the fact that we're sort of forced to incorporate things that we've been learning lately, because certain phrases or vocab words I might, kind of neglect and forget about and never really learn how to use them if I didn't have to do it in the writing. So I think that's helpful, and I like that about it. But I think initially, right now, the writing is manageable because, like I said, it's like 250 words every few weeks, which is fine. And at this point, we've kind of learned how to do it. But initially, when we started these writings, for me, it was like I'd never really done anything like that before. So just jumping in and not being able, from what I recall, I kind of wished I had, an example, maybe reading more, not so much, academic readings, but, examples of how students would write, because I was unsure of what I was supposed to be doing, so.
Okay.
I would agree with that. In a way, I feel like they teach us to write kind of by just, if we were learning to swim, they would just push us into the pool and expect us to try to kind of figure it out, and then but I feel like that's kind of how the whole Arabic course is set up with Al-Kitab. Like, you learn parts of everything, and then later on you'll learn even more about the subject, and then finally you learn everything there is to know about certain grammatical functions. And in that respect, it's both good and bad. Like, it keeps you not too overwhelmed because you don't have to worry about everything, but at the same time, there's definitely struggles in that you really do kind of have to figure things out for yourself until you're officially taught it later on, and so it can be frustrating. But recently, like, we've learned a lot more grammar in second year, and so it's not. I don't feel like it's as much as like I feel like we're finally able to communicate more effectively, and then when we get feedback, it's a lot easier to understand like how to improve now.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I would agree that it was a little frustrating trying to fill in the gaps of the material we haven't really learned. They kind of just told us, oh, don't worry about that part, you'll learn it later, sort of thing.
Kind of just, you're agreeing with what he says in terms of like grammar.
Right.
So how do we linguistically express things if we don't know
Exactly.
them yet?
Like the plurals, they told us, Masriyin or Masriyun, like, we never really learned the difference between those even yet. And so sometimes I'm like, do I put een or un? Like, I'm not sure. And it kind of is frustrating because I wish I would know everything right now. But, I mean, there's so much material that I know they can't expect us to know that right now. So sometimes I wonder if it actually does make sense when I'm writing it. But for the most part, like, I know I can get my concept across. I mean, and I like how our topics usually always relate to the Middle East. I think that's helpful because, I mean, Arabic isn't just a language, it's part of a culture, and it seems like all of our topics have related to different areas of the Middle East, and I appreciate that a lot.
You mentioned something interesting, that the teachers need to know that they cannot expect you to know everything and be able to do everything. But do you know that you cannot expect yourself to be able to do everything?
Well, just in terms of what we've learned, I know they can expect me to use all the grammatical terms and everything that we've learned up to that point, but there's going to be some things that, I mean, it's going to be hard for us or difficult for us to know if we're necessarily doing it correctly. But I think as long as we're pushing ourselves to use everything that we've learned so far, then it's fine. It's not a mistake.
Would you feel like the grammar that they've given you is enough for the writing that they expect of you?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. So they don't push you to write things beyond your level?
No, it's just sometimes just me being picky, like, oh, I wish, I might have learned this so far, but I don't feel like I'm graded harshly on something that I haven't learned before. No.
Okay.
Not like that.
We're doing pretty well on time, so I think we can get through all the questions. What would make the program better?
The Arabic program as a whole, or just
in
writing?
In terms of Arabic and writing, specifically.
Make it better? Oh, man.
What do you wish they did that they don't? Or have you ever thought to yourself, this would really be beneficial, but they don't do it?
Can I get skipped and come back?
Of course.
Okay, I can't think of anything.
We'll come back to you.
For me, I think I think kind of example what Claire was saying about more example, so we know what is expected of us more. I think that would be helpful, or maybe more guidelines while writing, like use certain constructs within it, so you don't have to think. It takes creativity out of it, but I think for learning purposes, it might be beneficial at the same time. And personally, for me, I think I would prefer more writing conferences. I learned well from that method, so.
I agree with a lot of what Ethan was saying about, like, maybe more writing conferences, but maybe at the same time, I think it's hard to know how I'm doing in comparison to other people. So, not that I would want to, like, read, other students in my classes, like, writing all of the time, but maybe if there was something, like, we did compare with partners or something like that, so I could, see what mistakes I'm making and what other students are making, and, try and work through those with people who are on the same level as I am. That's something that I think would be beneficial, is to just be able to work with other students on writing when
Right.
it's
And
been a really individual thing.
maybe you can teach them something, they
Mhm,
can teach
yeah.
you something, you can
Right.
remind each other of.
Mhm.
So peer review, kind of, you think would be helpful.
Yeah.
Have you, in year 2, have you done any peer review at all? No? Nothing?
Outside of class, but nothing as assignment.
Okay,
Mhm.
got it. I know year 3 has. Same question to you. What would make the program better in terms of learning how to write?
So that was gonna be my suggestion, that we do peer reviewing earlier.
Studying in 2nd year, for example,
Yeah.
as opposed to 3rd.
Because, I mean, well, you visited our class the first time and the only time that we've done it, and it was just kind of like thrown at us, like, well, just, read it and see what you get out of it. And I wish I could have said that I helped my partner, or that she helped me, but both of us were kind of unsure of what to do with it, because we've never done that before. Like, I've never read someone else's essay in class. So I can see, like, how beneficial it'd be if we had the skills to be able to give each other feedback. Because, and I realized, like, when I was in high school, like, there was so much peer review. We used to grade each other's as homework, we used to grade each other's as tests in class, and that's how we were, like, that's how grammar was reinforced, and that's how writing was reinforced, not for Arabic, for a different language. And so, and we haven't had any of that, or I haven't had any of that. And so, if that was somehow incorporated into the curriculum, I think it'd be really beneficial. And, like, even though I wasn't able to give her much feedback, my partner, it was really helpful to be able to read her writing, like, oh, she uses all these constructs that I've ignored, or like, this is really great vocabulary, why don't I use that kind of vocabulary? And then she'd be able to point out, like, typos, or say, this doesn't make sense to me, what are you trying to say here? Because even though she can't correct my grammar yet, she can still tell me that, like, I don't make any sense. And that was helpful. So, like,
Yeah.
you don't need a TA, right, to, like, tell you that you don't make any sense.
Right. Well, you do need someone, however, with at least, I suppose, a particular comprehension level.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Okay, so that would be your thing, is up the peer review frequency, and maybe start it earlier.
Yeah.
Okay. Any?
I mean, I definitely agree with the peer review. I think that would be a huge help to kind of be able to compare yourself to students, and to just make sure y'all are kind of, on the same level. And like she said, if, one student's using maybe material you have been ignoring, I feel like that could be really helpful in just reinforcing something that you haven't really paid that much attention to. And also just with our writings, I know some drafts we're not required to turn back in or to have another draft, and I wish that all of our writings we were required to edit them, because I kind of feel like if without that requirement, I won't really take the time to go back and see how I could correct it, but having it as a requirement would be a good idea to make sure I go back and understand what I did wrong.
And then that way, everything that you produce that's written for the class does get reviewed, does get corrected, or something. There's some way you can learn from that experience.
Correct.
Got it. Even if it's like the 2nd or 3rd draft,
Mhm.
right? Anything else on what you think that would make the program better, specifically in terms of how they teach writing? Any additional thoughts? No? Okay, last question. How do you foresee yourself using your Arabic writing skills in the future?
In the future, I think writing is a good way to make summaries of things that you have heard or listened to. I mean, you can, obviously repeat a summary or repeat what you've heard in a video or a lecture, but writing it down, actually, it can stay with you. I think it's a good way to just to summarize what you've heard. That way you can look back and have a comparison of when you started this semester, and then looking to the future 2 semesters later, you can have that good comparison. And writing's just different than speaking. It is. I mean, I don't know. I like writing.
How do you foresee yourself using your Arabic writing skills in the future?
Alright, well, I definitely think that in the, I would think more, if I were to work and employ my Arabic in the future, I would think that speaking would be probably the number one skill to have. But I feel like in order to be able to fully communicate within the language and understand the culture, writing would definitely just be a mandatory skill to have, especially if you're going to be reading or researching or something in another language. If you can't write, like writing's how I really solidify all the grammar and everything. So if I weren't able to write, I would be confused as to why certain things were when I was reading them, and it would probably not make near as much sense. So for me, I think writing is more like a foundation to reading. And so, yeah.
Claire?
I guess in the near future, I mean, it'll definitely help with content courses, which I plan on taking. But more broadly than that, I feel like being a good writer in English has helped me to express myself better. So I imagine it would be the same in Arabic, where if you can write, even just speaking, or whatever, writing emails, you know, you can express yourself more clearly and succinctly if you know how to write well.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So I want to be an academic, and I think that, I mean, I don't foresee myself writing academic Arabic articles, but I definitely would want to employ it as a research language. So for me to, I think, kind of like what you were pointing at, like, to really be able to communicate effectively, like, writing represents, like, if you can't write, then you can't communicate effectively, and you probably don't know what you're reading. So I think it'll be a stepping stone for me being able to, I don't know, gain greater fluency in Arabic.
Great. That concludes my questions. Did anyone have any last inspired thoughts, perhaps?
I was going to say, I'm really glad that we learned how to type in Arabic, because I feel like that's going to be a skill that we definitely will use if we decide to pursue Arabic in our, you know, choice of career.
Yeah.
Even though that was really difficult at first, I feel like that's
Still difficult.
it's still very difficult.
It's still very difficult.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's definitely helped with writing, I feel like.
Do you remember when you were younger, would they give you those specific kind of rules for how to type in English? You know, the position and, you know, thumb takes that, fifth finger takes that, whatever.
Monkeys.
Did you learn, was there any sort of system like that for learning how to type in Arabic?
No.
Just wherever your fingers naturally went, kind of, I feel like.
I mean, personally, I use the same way I would type.
The same fingering, basically.
Yeah, and I just have to make the connection to the new letters. And I think that's actually what I dislike about writing sometimes the most, because I can think about what I want to write, and then it physically take me a lot longer than I can think it to actually get it onto the computer. Yeah, that's definitely what slows me down the most.
Okay. The typing.
Yeah, but once you print out like a paper in Arabic, you feel really awesome about yourself.
You're
So
like,
it's worth it. It's just slow.
Okay. Great. Anything else? Okay, thank you for your time. It's been great.
Okay.
Thank you, Scott.